Hey, so we have just looked at really why Great Britain did not suffer from the revolutions of 1830 and 1848. We've looked at the idea that evolutionary, that Overton window is continuing to move leftward to a degree, moderately though. Let's not get like, ooh, it's all changed. But we also notice how they treated the Irish, and we're going to see later the ultimate impact. But now we're going to kind of journey through the revolutions of 1830. This is a great painting that we're going to talk about a little bit later, but I hope when you see it, you see a wave of revolution crushing the old order. Such a great element. There's going to be romantic hopes of this nationalism. And let's go jump in. So France in the 1820s. Louis XVIII embraced the moderate charter in hopes of satisfying the French people. And when I say moderate charter, yeah, I guess it's a constitution, so it's quote unquote liberal, but I think it was like less than 1% of the population were part of the electorate. So just crazy. The socialists, Republicans, and liberals, they were frustrated. They were demanding change. They had tasted liberty early on in the French Revolution, only to be really smothered by Napoleon and then the Restoration. And they're demanding change. And this painting, and again, I think it's a great painting to show you kind of who he is. But Charles X, he is an absolute reactionary. When Louis XVIII died, Charles X is going to take over in the mid 1820s. And he immediately begins reactionary changes. Number one, he actually paid indemnities to the immigrants. Remember who the immigrants were? The immigrants who fled the French Revolution in hopes to destroy it. Well, these were his friends, the ultra royalist, conservative, reactionary group. And he's like, come on back, and we're going to pay you an indemnity. An indemnity is a payment for loss. And he's going to restore some of their old traditions, their old privilege. And this really riled up the socialists. And this is why they're like, hey, we need more interaction. Well, the revolution of 1830 that we're going to call the July Revolution is this is the moment in which all changes. In July 1830, Charles X, what had just happened? Algeria had become a colony, so the French is all excited that they're redeveloping an empire. They believe they're progressing now. They're went from collapse to now progressive. There's a sense of excitement. On July 14th, Bastille Day, they celebrated the Bastille, the revolution. They were so excited and probably inebriated, drunk. And this is when Charles X, hoping that this national fervor would overcome anything, he actually issues the July ordinances. And the July ordinances suspended the charter. So even though the charter is not very liberal, it actually guaranteed Charles X pretty much absolute power. It wasn't good enough, and he issued these July ordinances. Once they were published, they became public, the newspapers, print culture, immediately blasted him and sent him out. And that created a kind of a spontaneous revolution. And again, we see might be something that young Karl Marx is hearing about, and this might be why he's developing his philosophy. But the Parisians, they forge a coalition and they immediately build barricades. Barricades, they use broken up road, they use furniture, basically, and they build almost like a dam into the streets because the streets are really narrow, and then that becomes their fortification. And once the barricades are up, the National Army can't really do anything about it. So the French army basically gives up. Charles X realized there was really no reason for it to fight, so he fled to England, ushering in a new government. This, again, really kind of interesting. This is, yes, we see a painting here with dead people, but for a revolution, it seems as if, could this be their glorious revolution? Unfortunately not. The revolutionaries were all excited. They invited Louis Philippe of Orleans. The Orleans becomes the new quote unquote dynasty of France, and Louis Philippe promises to fulfill the charter and progress. And sometimes we call he's the July monarch, and his reign is called July Days, and he will rule France from 1830 all the way to 1848, and he ushers in, and he immediately declares himself the citizen king. He rejected the royal regalia of his predecessor. He's attempting to kind of look bourgeois in a way. There's this romantic hope in which that he's going to be the citizen king. The idea, this piece, we've already talked about this piece during the Romantic era. This is Delacroix. He painted this to honor the citizen king. It's the idea that Lady Liberty is rising from the ashes of the previous revolution with the memory of the Bastille behind her. She's leading the future for posterity as a child, is excited. We see the bourgeois and proletariats behind him. She's leading a united, and it really stops here. But the question is, can he be the citizen king? Most of you already power map the next part, and you realize, unfortunately, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Louis will shift from being a citizen king to a bourgeois king, and we'll talk about that later as we get to 1848. But what we see here, this little slogan that Metternich says, when France sneezes, Europe catches a cold. Almost immediately, the Belgians are so excited here. They border France. They demanded their independence from the Dutch, and they realized that the continent of Europe couldn't intervene because France was in the middle of a revolution. So if the Prussian forces rushed into the Belgium, there would be a fear that France, being the power vacuum, could create chaos. So the Belgians, the Flemish, they utilize this as leverage. And in 1830, they declare their independence. The Dutch could not really do anything about it. And by 1839, and this is a treaty I want you to know with the Belgian Revolution. It's called the Peace of London, or the Treaty of London. And the Treaty of London was an agreement between the European powers and Belgium that Belgium could become an independent state as long as it remained neutral in all future conflicts. Great Britain desperately wanted Belgium not to impact the balance of power. So Belgium says, yes, we promise not to form an active military. We're not going to have an active foreign policy. We're going to stabilize and progress our country. We're so excited. And then England, Parliament, guaranteed Belgium protection. So who's going to provide the military might to protect Belgium's border? It's going to be Great Britain. Right now, this agreement's between 1836 and 1839. Belgium is now an independent country, and it becomes almost like a protectorate of Great Britain. It will give Great Britain moral reasoning to get involved in World War I. So this is an important moment. The Belgian Revolution of 1830 is successful because France is in revolution. The concert doesn't interact. Great Britain pauses their glory, their splendid isolation, and at this moment says, we are going to make sure that you are a democracy and you're able to progress. So this is a great romantic moment. I love this painting. We see here the revolutionary leader leading that wave of nationalism, crushing the old order. Such a beautiful piece. Unfortunately, I have not been to Belgium, where this is located. I've only been to Bruges, part of Belgium. But with that said, really cool stuff. Unfortunately, the same can't be said for the Polish. The Polish, by the time we get to the late summer, they're way excited. They're like, if France revolts, Belgium revolts, of course we can revolt. So out of a wave of nationalism, they're absolutely creating this momentum. Here is a woman who almost like a Joan of Arc character for the Polish, and I don't know much about her. I just identify. She actually leads troops, guarantees that she's going to lead. There's monuments all over the place in Poland for her. So definitely something if you wanted to go look at. Really interesting stuff. But with that said, this wave of nationalism really motivated Belgium. They had this romantic Polish Revolution of 1830, and unfortunately, Nicholas I was not playing games. He brutally destroyed this revolution. All of the leaders, she actually dies of natural causes at a young age, but the leaders are going to be executed. And by 1832, the Poles won't really have any more infrastructure that will allow them to really pose a significant threat. They'll have minor revolutions throughout this, trying to gain independence, but they have really no opportunity. This was their all in moment. They're going to put all of their energy. They believe the time is now. And instead, Nicholas the First builds upon his official nationality with this organic statute. And the organic statute of 1832 was a reactionary edict from the king, from the czar, that stated Poland had never been independent and Poland has been historically part of Russia. So he is denying the existence of the Polish people. He's arguing that the Poles have imagined that they're independent people, but in reality, they're nothing but Russians. So this organic statute allows for him to utilize a secret police called the Third Section to kind of go in there, utilize these elements. He's going to ferret out the revolutionaries. And the Tsar clearly now, with the December's Revolution of 1825, the Polish Revolution of 1830, he really becomes the apex of the reactionaries, and he becomes a significant individual. By the time this is over, he's no longer worried about revolutions of future. So he's actually going to become the quote unquote policeman of Europe. And Nicholas I will use his military to help protect other reactionary regimes. And we'll see how that plays out. And as we see this, we're now on the precipice of the revolutions of 1848. I'm going to pause here.